Here comes everybody running in.
Running in, which means sitting in front of a screen.
Yes. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome. If everybody could please turn off their audio and video for right now, that would be great, just so we can focus on our speakers tonight and not be distracted. As much as we want to see your lovely faces, we can maybe pop in at the end and wave to everybody. We'll go ahead and have everybody take that off for now. And give everybody a second here to get into the audio and everything. Check everybody out there. There's just a brief little window here where I have to do a couple of techie things, so forgive me for having a delay there, but go ahead and get everybody where they need to be. But in the meantime, the chat room is open, so you are more than welcome to do that. And here we go. Okay, I think we've got just about everybody in there. So, all right. Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for your patience there. A little bit of background work here that I've got to be a multitasker for. So welcome to this Anderson's Bookshop virtual author event with Rob Bell. We are so glad to have you all with us tonight. I think some of you were perhaps here for his last in-person visit to Anderson's a few years ago, so we're hopefully have you back, or if you're new to Anderson's, welcome. Just a reminder again to please leave off your video and your audio while we're having this conversation. Thanks to all of you for taking the time to keep your eyes on yet another screen to talk books with us tonight. We are excited to have you here. Anderson's is an independent bookstore. We are actually owned and run by the Anderson family and have been for 6 generations now. So your support means the world to us. So we just like to take a moment to say thank you so much for being here and for your support of us. It's really personal, and we really, really appreciate it. I also want to give Rob a special shout out for specifically supporting independent bookstores on this virtual tours of his. It's a crazy time for retail. It's a crazy time for independent bookstores. We're all trying to make this work, and I have my shirt says use your power to empower. I thought it was good for tonight, and we appreciate Rob, you taking that platform and helping us out, supporting us. Good. Normally we'd be having this event in person, of course, and with about 400 elders that we do throughout a normal year. But of course, we're hoping that this virtual style keeps us all tied over until we can be together again, whenever that is. We have lots of other virtual events coming up, though, and hopefully something else will strike your fancy. In a couple of days, we have Reed Forgrave, who wrote a novel on a young man who took his own life after dealing with injuries from football, and what the youth football and young adult program in our country looks like. A really powerful book. Don't miss that. And just announced today, we are going to be involved with the Rachel Hollis tour coming. So some other nonfiction things, and also fiction, and for all ages as well. So please check out our website and our social media and come join us again for another one. But tonight, we are very happy to welcome back to Anderson's Mr. Rob Bell with his new book, Everything is Spiritual. He is the author of 10 books. So does that include this one? Is it up to 11 now?
I do believe this is 11.
This is the 11th book. All right, lucky 11, including several New York Times bestsellers, What We Talk About When We Talk About God, The Zimzum of Love, Love Wins, and What is the Bible? His podcast called The Robcast was named by iTunes Best of 2015. He's been profiled in The New Yorker, toured with Oprah, and in 2011, Time Magazine named him one of the most 100 influential people in the world. And I will let you, Rob, introduce then our moderator tonight, Alexander John Shaia. But thanks both to you for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you, Jenny from Anderson's.
Hey.
Hi, all the peoples out there. Here we are, Alexander.
Here we are.
So,
as I said, this house is just about 1,200 miles wide.
Yes, we're all like in a living room.
Well, yeah, I'm in the really, really, really back house.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway, hello everyone. It's great to be here tonight.
I'm so glad you said yes to this. The original plan was that the book would come out and then I'd get on airplanes and stay in hotels and go to bookstores, do a theater club tour or whatever. And then when plan A got changed along with everything and the old world left and we all entered into this new world, my publisher, St. Martin, says, well, plan B, how about a virtual event tour where you'd be in conversation? And so I was like, wait, I could just ask people I love and admire to read the book and then find out what they think. And you were like one of the first people on my list. I was like, oh, for sure, we'll see if Alexander can. So I'm in my front yard here up against the hedge doing a book tour,
Yeah.
and I get to talk to these people that I love. So Alexander, you read the book. What did you think?
Well, I must, when I got the book, I thought, there's no way that this book is going to be better than my favorite book of yours, which is what we think of when we talk about God. And it is. It is absolutely phenomenal. And the number one thing about, of course, you're another author here. I'm sitting watching the way that you're constructing or deconstructing. I'm calling this the deconstructed book. You've developed a new style for writing a book. And a shout out to Seth Price and Glenn Siepert. The three of us have been having a little book club and talking about what I might talk about with you tonight. But the first thing is you have created a way of a book that you can pick this book up and open it anywhere. First of all, there are no chapters. It's like you start somewhere and you end somewhere, and it just goes on. And it's amazing.
Yeah, well, good Lord, you saying that, thank you. You know, the great American architect Louis Kahn would begin designing a building by asking, what does this building want to be?
Mm-hmm.
And someone just said, will Rob do a virtual tour this year? Yeah, that's what this is. I love it. So right away, as soon as the opening line of the book, my grandma used to keep cash in her bra. As soon as that dropped out of the sky, it was like nothing I'd ever experienced, even in communicating, let alone writing. Like, oh, this is inviting me to go places I've never been. So just trust it. Just trust it. And it right away was like, oh no, you can't outline this or structure it. You know what I mean? There's no like chapter break. There's no points you're making. And so the two questions that immediately arose were what happened and then what happened next. And it was like, just keep, if you're in telling people what happened and what did you learn? And then what happened next? And it was like just looping through those. Yeah. You know what I mean? It instantly had like a weird structure, not structure.
Right. But somewhere in this book that's not a book, that's a book, you tell the story of when you realized that first line was going to be the first line of whatever this is. Yeah. Because that wasn't your initial thought.
No, it was originally a book of just big ideas about the universe and creation, and it was Everything is Spiritual Part 3 from my tours I've done. It was originally like big ideas, but it was like, no, these ideas, how did you come to these? Like, there's a story behind all the stuff that you've been doing for all these years. Right. And it was like some sort of invitation to sink from head into heart, to let head serve heart. There was something full-bodied about it. It was an invitation to move into the next chapter of my being. I mean, that's what it felt like. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, this book is doing something to me, and then if anybody else reads it someday, whatever. That was like not even the thing.
Because the book, I mean, you give so much of yourself in this, much more than any other book I've ever read of yours. But you take it really deeply, and you take it from the personal to the universal.
Yes.
Everyone I have talked to who has read this book can relate to it, even though we're all coming from such different places in our lives. It's like you've told your story in a way that tells our story.
Yes, and that was the thing. It was like, oh no, double down on the particulars. Mm-hmm. And see, I came from this tradition, don't make it about yourself. You know what I mean? It's all about the worst accusation was that you told too many stories or it was all about you. But my lived experience has been, that's how we move together in the world as we open our hearts to each other.
Yeah.
And the only way to open our hearts to each other is to trust that if I go far enough inside of me, I'll find you. And if I go far enough inside of you. So you think about polarization, political polarization is the inability to see yourself in someone else.
Yeah.
As opposed to when you're filled with bitterness, is your rationality a bit less? Do you make the best decisions when you've been excluded and are filled with resentment? Oh, okay, so I do know that. And that became, I'm seriously, Alexander, that became like this, just tell them the story and don't be ironic and don't try to impress. Just tell them what it was like to be you and trust that people will find themselves in it. When I was starting out as a preacher, the worst criticism would be that if you, like, I just tell stories. Because you know what I mean? There was like objective, abstract, conceptual, capital T truth that we all were supposed to intellectually assent to.
Mm-hmm.
And then stories were illustrations or examples of truth instead of, no, the story is the truth. And the rest is commentary. That was the giant leap for me that changed everything.
One of the things that I started doing preparing for this time with you was I started lining out all the differences between us.
Oh wow! Like two columns.
Well, yeah, and it just went on and on. I mean, you're the Northern European descendant, born in Michigan, comes from an American family where you didn't really know a lot about your family history.
Right.
Evangelical Christian background. I'm on the other side of the fence. I'm first generation Lebanese. I'm born in Birmingham, Alabama in the 1950s. You're in the 1970s. Huge cultural gap there. The Christian tradition that I grew up in was not about telling the stories. It was all about a sensory mystical experience,
Yes.
which was people call it smells and bells, but the Sunday worship wasn't about the sermon.
It wasn't about your brain.
It wasn't about the brain.
Right.
It was about an experience. And I was born across the tracks. I was considered colored in Birmingham, Alabama in the 1950s. And many know the story that the KKK burned down my grandmother's house in 1957. So I grew up in a very different way from you, with a very different sense of what I was going to be. Because from the very first moment I was born, my father said, and you will be an Alexander, and you will be a priest in the family line. That's who you are. That's all you are. Don't you ever have another thought about doing anything else with your life. So until I left seminary, there was never a thought in my head about what do I want to do.
And what age was that? What do I want?
22. The biggest wound of my life was that when I realized I had to leave seminary or I was going to psychically die, maybe even suicidal.
Yeah.
But knowing that I had to make that decision in the face of that my father would be shattered and potentially disown me, which he sort of did in the Mediterranean way.
Mm-hmm. I remember over the years, you've always said to me, my people are a Semitic people.
We are, and I don't know where, Semite means the village people of the Middle East. So the people of Lebanon, Jordan, and Israel, we're all Semites. Yeah. I don't know where that word came to mean a particular one of us, but, and we as my grandparents would say to me, we're all one culture that have been horribly divided by religion.
Yeah. And then somehow you and I meet up and we connect.
We do.
Yeah. See, this was for me.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
You go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, tell the story of our meeting. Do you remember?
I emailed your website cold.
Yes.
That's what like a super fan, because I had read your book, the hid, and
And you
just emailed
didn't,
like, this guy's not going to respond. He's Alexander Shaia. He's out. He's communing with the spirit of Joseph Campbell out in the wilderness with a giant pile of candles. I mean, I had images of you, and then you actually got back to me.
yeah, 1 year later.
Was it a year?
Yeah, because you emailed me on exactly the day that we were changing servers in the office, and all the emails that came in that day disappeared. And exactly 1 year later, they all downloaded onto my computer, and it was about 1,000 emails. And I thought, I'm not going to go through this. But my more obsessive side went through each one. And then there was this email: "Hi, this is Rob. I'd like to talk to you."
Is that what I wrote?
Yeah.
That even sounds like a long email for me. But you know what it was? It was because I went to seminary and then became a pastor, and I was studying the Bible. So I kind of came into the Bible in this. I started reading it because I was giving sermons, but what I kept discovering was that this was about what it means to be human. That there is this experience we're having as humans, and then there are these traditions that have told stories and worked to give language to this experience that we're having and to name patterns, and so it was taking the scriptures seriously, but in a completely different way than I had seen other people interacting with it. And when I encountered your work, I was like, oh, this is somebody else who's after what it means to be human. And then these traditions, and this particular tradition, have a lot of pretty awesome things to say about it.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, we're doing very similar things here, actually.
Yeah, but starting from totally different places.
Yes, right.
Which is
right.
what I love, is like something is going on in every creative today. It's like we're all dipping out of the same well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we're not doing it because we're letting each other teach each other. It's like we're going to the well and finding, oh wow, you're saying it this way, I'm saying it this way.
Yes, exactly. And what's interesting about all of us is we came from a setting, a culture, a tribe that told us this is how it works. And we had to, at some point, keep going at the risk that our tribe of origin wouldn't understand where it was taking us. So everybody has like a limp, but it's a limp because you've wrestled with the divine. It's okay. It's okay. It's good.
One of the lines from your book that I wrote down, it's at the end of ourselves that new futures open up.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's so true for me. It's like that moment when I realized I had to leave seminary or I was going to die.
Yeah.
It was the end of everything that I had been taught, everything my family had given me, everything my family expected of me. And I had no idea what the next step was.
And yet, the deep knowing within you knew this direction.
I knew I had to leave.
Yeah.
And there was this little voice inside that said, there'll be that next step. It might just be 6 inches ahead.
Yes. Yes.
There was enough of a sense that I knew that I wasn't going to get to see the whole road, but I was just going to be able to see the next step, and then the next step, and then the next step.
Yeah. I always say there's enough texture and color and direction, enough vague outline of a shape to know which direction to move, but not enough detail or guarantee or certainty that it would take all the wonder and mystery and trembling and holy fear out of it.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Can I run an idea? Can I run an idea by you, based on what you just said?
Sure.
Which parentheses is probably the next book. Moses tells the people, I've put before you life and death in Deuteronomy. And for most people in the modern world, life and death are two modes. You're either alive and you're here, and then death is the thing that happens after whatever this thing is. But in ancient Hebrew consciousness, life and death are two modes of being here and now. You can be alive but actually be dying at some level. And I love how you said something within you would die, because in my experience, framing it this way for people, just frame the thing as life and death. And people, it's just this novel you want to write. It's just this thought that maybe you should move 10 miles over. Maybe you should go do that job. It's fine to frame it as life and death. Something within me will die if I don't follow this something that has arisen within me that's demanding expression.
Right.
And to me, that's how you actually, that's one of the prime ways we get a sense of direction. As soon as we frame it in terms of, oh yeah, if I say no to this, something within me dies. It actually is a matter of life and death, even though it appears from the outside like, I just got this business idea. If you don't try it, something within you dies.
Right. And that if you don't die, you won't have the next thing.
Well, say more about that.
Well, I'm trying to remember a Rumi poem, and I can't even paraphrase it right very well at this moment. But it's a long list of my standing before God, telling him how wonderful my life is, and God just keeps saying one word: die. But my soul is so unblemished at this moment: die. But and what we don't seem to understand today in our culture is that death is the next natural progression.
Yes. Now progression into whatever's next?
Into whatever's next, yes.
Death itself is a binary.
It's the end of ourselves.
Yes.
That the new future opens.
Yes.
But why? I mean, we don't have models for this, or we don't have very many models for this. And I was fortunate to have somebody like Joseph Campbell who kept telling me the story until I could believe it in my gut. That it's life, death, life. It's always life, death, life.
Yes. And then you think about our ancestors, just go back a couple hundred years. Grandpa laid down in the corner of the tent and stopped breathing. We were there. And your sister, mom, went into the back part of the tent. And a half day later, here was your sister. So the comings and goings were happening all around you. And you were in a deeply connected to the earth setting where there were seasons and everything died and then everything sprung forth. And now food is grown somewhere else. People who are at the end of life are moved into a home somewhere. Birth happens in a tile floored, fluorescent lighted room across town. So these experiences that actually earlier would have shown you in very visceral detail that this is all a part of it, it's all very natural, become unknown, which then, I love how Dallas Willard said, familiarity breeds unfamiliarity. And unfamiliarity breeds contempt. So now these things that we're just seen as it's part of it become to be resisted contempt. Yeah, there's a lot more to say about death.
Well, I was so, I don't know, shocked, taken by the story of your father learning that his father had died while he's picked up in the car on the way to the funeral home.
Back seat of the car.
This is totally different from the Lebanese culture.
Yeah.
Where we're all together, we're all in the death experience together. That is, and there's never a thought about a child not going to the funeral home. Oh no, it's important for the child to be at the funeral home.
And to take part in the rhythms, even life and death itself, and to participate in them, and then they lose their sort of catatonic power, because we've seen this.
Totally.
Yeah. This happened actually in the writing, because I just kept writing. Okay, what happened next? Not from a memoir, like tell them everything, just everything is spiritual. What happened next in your everything is spiritual. And I remember typing, oh, this is why the why questions of suffering have never been that compelling, because I was born into a setting where people were missing, and no amount of explanation was going to bring them back or fix anything. I was born into like post-trauma. Like something just happened on the stage, and now I've appeared in like the second act, and everything is affected by this, even though it's not something that seems to be the obvious thing everybody's talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like literally, Alexander, a moment of typing and realizing that's my work. I've never spent a lot of time, and why do good people, bad things happen, and why do we it was always just like, because just, it's a world, it's free to be a world, okay? And why my work has had such the only interesting thing is opening your eyes to what's happening in the mess, because something's lurking in all of this. And then when I became a pastor and you just kept getting a front row seat to all this, people would call when I was 25, will you come to the hospital? Our son just took his life. So all of a sudden, time and time again, at not too young, but at very young age, way out of my depth, I'm sitting with people in the most brutal agonies of life. And yet, there's something going on even in that. Like, keep your eyes open, people. We're going to grieve, cry, we're going to mourn, but then keep your eyes open.
Yeah.
Something's happening here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it shaped me.
Yeah. There's something in what you just said that reminds me of the part of the book where you talk about spirit needs form and form needs spirit.
Yes.
And I love that, because there's something in me that reacts every time somebody says, well, you're spiritual beings having a human experience. I pull back from that, because spirit and human form are together. I don't like making spirit and human form some sort of dichotomy or hierarchy.
Right. We both love Desjardins and that quote. It's lovely, but it can also make it feel like Ghost in the Machine. It could ever so subtly devalue body and tacos and hikes and surfing and the physicality, the sweat and blood and tears and soil of life. That's, spirit takes on matter.
I mean, my work as a psychologist is to help people be more embodied.
Yes.
The more embodied you are, the more in harmony and peaceful and loving you will be. I mean, people have this idea somehow that if a man is more embodied as a man, he's going to be a rapist. No, it's just the opposite. The more embodied a man is, the more gentle and loving and harmony he's going to be.
He'll have an ease within his own skin.
Absolutely.
Which will translate. This is one of the things in the book. I wanted the book to have a cumulative effect of changing what a person meant by spiritual from something that evacuates or something disembodied. I wanted people to pick up embodiment. I don't even say it that specifically that many times, simply because I wanted it to be a feeling that was cumulative, that as the book progresses, you're like, whatever he means by spiritual, it has something to do with bodies and arms and songs and food. You know what I mean? I wanted people to be like, no, spiritual is this, the drama, the body.
I was so glad. I'm in a rented house in Santa Fe because I'm just finishing my quarantine coming back from Spain. And when I got to that point in the book where you talked about there's not the word spiritual in the Hebrew text, I just stood up and shouted at the top of my lungs, yes, absolutely. You know, to say that everything is spiritual is to say that there's no such thing as spiritual. It's everything.
Oh, I just have this image of you doing that all alone in that house.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that was like 26, 27 years old, these ideas. When I came across that, was like, wait. Even the story in the book about, I mean, goodness, this is 25 years ago. This is a quarter of a century ago. realizing that the church was doing a survey and asking people about their spiritual lives, and realizing that first church I worked in was weirdly enough rigged to keep this split in place, was like, oh my word, this church, which the Bible is its God, it's actually keeping in place the very system and categories and dichotomy that this book is written. This book is written to tear down the temple, because the whole thing's a temple. And yet this thing is a giant 100-person choir, 200-person orchestra temple to split things into sacred, even sacred, secular, spiritual, the rest of life. This whole system is actually working against its very foundational texts are subverting this whole thing, and they don't realize it.
Right.
I mean, that I remember, just wait a second. So then we started another church. So then I started a church to try and take that all apart, and it was even more intense. I remember giving sermons like, this isn't the point. This is where we gather to have our eyes open to the divine and all of life. And it was like people would say, hey, that's great. Can you say that next week? And I was like, no,
Well,
this whole thing creates and keeps in place a duality, that the point of this gathering is to blow that duality to shreds, but the medium keeps drowning out the message.
right. And I don't know where in the progression of your story it is, but the community that you started, where you start to preach about women's equality,
Yeah.
and they begin to look into how they can revoke your ordination.
It was like theater of the absurd. It was unbelievable. By the way, I should tell you about one night. They decided to do a public open Q&A where people could ask me questions about women's equality, which to me was like, what? Like, yes. What other question? And
Next.
And now you think about it, like, what was I thinking? I sat alone on a stool, and anybody could come up to the mic and just say whatever, and people took it as an opportunity to just publicly just tear me to shreds. And I was sitting there as people would just say the most unfiltered things, and yet now I think, oh, this was a fear of the foundations. Now I see the psychology of what I was actually pulling bricks out of the wall.
Right.
That had political, economic, relational, family like I was pulling bricks out of a wall that I didn't even at the time, I was what, 31? I had now realized how terrifying what I was doing must have been for some of those people. Like I can now feel it almost.
Yeah.
And see
I mean,
it.
that has happened to me over and over again. There have been a number of communities that I've either begun or been an integral part of. And there comes a moment where, because I'm moving on, it's like I'm growing, but the community is back here. And it's like we can't let you go there.
And like, what's an example of a time?
I think probably one of the most challenging pieces for me is when I began to teach about how light and dark were both of God.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And the whole Christian system is built upon splitting these two apart. Every hymn, every prayer, every line, and I don't care who's speaking it.
Yeah.
Some great dark-skinned folks are still got their own interior demonization of the dark.
Yeah.
Anyway, but
yeah.
as I push on it, as I grow into that in myself, and I think partly it means so much to me because I am a dark-skinned person, although most people don't perceive me that way. But that's how I was in Birmingham, Alabama. I was colored. it's very important for me to reclaim the wholeness from that split. And it is so important today that we not think about that if we are in a dark time, that this is the place where God is not. This is the place where God is.
Oh, absolutely.
This is pregnant time. As hard as it feels, this is pregnancy.
Yes. Yes. I even think about art that does not acknowledge dark and just skips to the light. It skips over Friday in order to just race to Sunday is always the art that makes us want to throw up in our mouths. Where we're like, no, that does not help me. But if this piece demonstrates that the person understands Friday and has been through Friday to get to Sunday, understands the dance between dark and light, it speaks. Yes.
Yeah.
By the way, I remember.
What?
Keep going.
Well, I was going to give you another example, but what's your question?
So when did you?
Well,
you and I have never had this conversation. You
yeah,
then.
there are actually a few things we haven't said to each other.
Oh, good Lord. There's still some things. Apparently, there's some things left. Okay, so you discovered that you had a role. You were doing something in a community, and then that chapter came to an end. You gave a gift. You, in some ways, took it as far as you could, and then it was time to move on. How would you would you say you stretched as far, like the rubber band, as far as it could stretch, or how would you, because it sounds like that is a pattern. Right. You were in a setting, gave the Alexander gift, and then, okay, that's what they can bear.
Yeah, I don't think I was wise enough to realize it at that moment, but it's like, for whatever reason, I have always had to grow. I've always had to grow. It's like I can't, I can't stay with what I was thinking about last year.
Oh goodness! Right.
And some of us just come to a point where we need to rest. I don't understand that in myself, but so that I now have learned that if I have to move on, I have to move on, and that we just need to bow to each other and keep going down different paths.
You know, Kristen and I, she's always been a step ahead anyway, but we were talking about this. We were married at 23 right away. Prior even to getting married and then getting married, we already knew this was our path, to follow it wherever it leads. Yeah. And that our job, we were here to grow. And I distinctly remember, I'm here to follow it and then try and give expression to what I've experienced in hopes that others not just would experience what I experienced, but would experience whatever they needed to experience, whatever they were going to experience. So I'm sure, like you, like the word career makes me laugh out loud. Like that is just to me like a completely absurd, like I have zero conception of like having a career or like a plan of like, here's the next 5 years, or even goals other than, like I can look right here on the desktop, right next to your face on the desktop of my computer. I can see the next book, the next play, this thing my son Trace and I are like, I can see a couple of things here. That's about the best plan or goal or any of that I could ever even, you know what I mean? I would just show you my laptop. I mean, here are a couple of things I'm making right now. You know what I mean? Other than that, the screen is blank. Or even what is success other than you and I are talking and this is just great? That's about what I got.
Yeah. I mean, I realize that there are other people who I think need the structure of goals. For me, it's just what's the next experience?
Yes. Yes. It's funny also what you just said, because, you know, the book ends in a field in Denmark, looking out at the ocean, standing there with Violet. That would have been August of 2019. That feels like I literally would want to say to everybody reading the book, yeah, that book is that was like old Rob. What was that, like 14 months ago?
Yeah.
That's forever. There's a whole book. There's a whole book between that field in Denmark and now. I'm sure you can relate. Like, take a picture, but it's of what was.
Right.
Even this book was just, yeah, that was the first 49 years.
Right.
We kept going even after the end of the book.
Yeah. 3 weeks ago, I was in Spain, and I am actually looking forward to going back. But the last 3 weeks have been a whole life unto itself.
Yes. Yeah. I realize in the book, the section on being a mystic, I was trying to capture anything that any template, any structure, any form, any measurement of an atom is what was.
Yeah.
The moment you apprehend it, it is what was. And any attempt, which is completely normal to try and like capture it. Jesus and the disciples up on the mountain, Rabbi, let me build a place. Don't even bother. Let me put up a shelter here. No. Any building you build will be to try and freeze an experience that you just had. So, yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. I want to run an idea by you. I think people are just now realizing Einstein's time is a persistent illusion. The past, present, future. You go up in an airplane, I stay on the ground. The watch that you have with you is going to run faster than the watch I have because time is running faster on a mountain than a valley. That time and our apprehension of time as past, present, future is the new flat Earth. Because the Earth looks flat, it's actually round. Past, present, future is what the best I actually think, and especially you look at quantum physics and then how it leaks into popular culture, that you're going to see more and more people realizing, you know what I mean? That the only thing you ever had is now. All of the past you can only experience as memory in the present. All of your anxieties and hopes and dreams about the future you can only experience. And there's only ever been the present. The present is infinite and bottomless. You know all this. Like, I actually think it's the next great evolution of consciousness.
I think it's a gift of this lockdown COVID.
Yes.
For myself, it's like for 100 days in Spain, I was in this one building. We couldn't go outside the door because the military was out there saying, you step outside the door, I'm going to give you a 600 euro fine. And there was the fullness of all time in this lockdown. It was really freaky.
Yeah.
And wonderful.
Yeah. You can see it with the past 6 months. Because if I had mentioned to you like November right now, that's an idea. November is a concept at this point.
Yeah. July.
What was that? Should we do a couple questions?
Sure.
You want to tell? I'll let you pick something. Pick something and do your thing on it.
Jenny, tell me what I should be doing here.
Well, you can look into the chat, and there's a couple of questions there.
Oh, yeah, it says 98. That's a couple.
Well, there's lots of comments and support as well. But somebody actually just asked, Alexander, can you explain what prayer is to you?
Prayer is an experience of now.
Oh, I love it. And then you just stop talking. I love it.
All right. How do you define and deal with epiphanies?
Good one, Rob. I'll give my thought, but what's yours?
My first answer would be, of course. Of course. So for many people, their experience of transcendence, illumination, waking up was mediated. Somebody somewhere decided whether your experience was legit or not. So it got run through a filter. But the great invitation always is to grow up, is to mature. So you're realizing that Spirit is within you. You possess Christ wisdom. You're living in a God-bathed world. Of course, there would be bushes burning all around you. So my response is to smile. Say, of course. Of course I would be thinking about that person. I would check my phone and they text me. Of course, Alexander and I would have a conversation and he would say things that I'll be thinking about for the next week. And we would get to know each other better with a bunch of people listening in. Like, so in some senses it moves from epiphanies as invasions, surprises, and unnatural interventions to epiphanies as the natural state of things. We just happen to have had our eyes closed for a number of reasons. Or we're numbing the pain, or we're looking at our machines, or we haven't woken up to this extraordinary experience we're having. So I begin with an epiphany, prayer. What else is this experience we're having? You're naming the experience that you're having and what matters to you. That's prayer. You're angry? Say it. Get it out. Offer it up. Yes, the whole thing is a prayer.
Yeah.
The whole thing is a temple.
Yeah.
I get all excited about that.
So I want to add a thought about epiphany, because I mean, we've got small epiphanies, like thinking about someone and they call or they text.
Yeah.
And then we have these moments where there's this larger sense of life, or this larger experience of life. And when those moments happen, they come to us as a high voltage energy. And the high voltage energy is more than what our usual everyday awareness is ready to deal with. So what I do in my work with people in those moments is I want them to allow themselves to oscillate with the energy. The energy's going to go up, the energy's going to go down, the energy's going to go up, the energy's going to go down. Don't fight it. Don't fight the wave. Go with it. I want to say surf with it, but surfing is not my metaphor. But because what people try to do is they try to hold on to the high, or some people plummet down into the low, rather than let go with the oscillation, and the oscillations will carry you to new solid ground.
Very nice. I often think about a sine wave from math class, and how if you come to see that the sine wave, because people are like, ooh, then you got to go down to the valley, instead of owning, you're on the mountain, everybody wants to be on the mountain, then you have to go down to the valley. No, own the whole sine wave.
Right.
Own the whole ride up, the ride down. The day when you feel lost, that's one of those lost days. Look at me having a lost day. Look at me filled with bitterness about something that I don't even know what it is yet. I got to sit with it. It's like you own the whole wave, and you let your body feel what it needs to feel. And then you're no longer fighting it. You're human. Yeah.
I most learned this in my psychological work. Sadly, my psychological work, not my theology, but in psychology, working in an art medium called sand play. Inviting a person to go to the sand tray and just find out what's true in this moment. And then what's true in the next moment, and the next moment, and the next moment. And that the truth is not in any one image that's created. The truth is in the flow.
Man, oh man, oh man, oh man, oh man. Man, oh
and this
man.
was, when I was taught in the classical way, we were taught you don't let people take pictures of the images because our small self wants to lock it down and say, I've arrived, or this is it. No, it's the flow. It's the flow. It's the next moment and the next moment and the next moment.
Alexander, just you saying that makes me think, when I was 22 and I went to study all this, a master's of divinity, if the first class they had said, okay, here's the thing: anger, part of it; rage, part of it; euphoria, part of it; a trippy feeling like, what is this experience we're having, part of it; some bitterness here and there. Of course, you're a human being. Like, if there would have been a class called all of it, it's all part of it. You know what I mean? And just
I love it.
Taken the electrical charge. There's this experience, this full spectrum of the human experience. And all the categories of winning, losing, good, bad, right, wrong, those categories are lovely and yet limiting.
Yeah.
Because the invitation is the source, and source will always transcend whatever categories you've cooked up. So that's the game we're playing here. So whatever it is, just say it, speak it, get it out, express it. You'll be fine. Just ride that wave. You'll be fine. Oh, that would have just been wonderful.
So we've got another question here.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please, Alexander.
Well, I'm just gonna, I'll add this one piece about what I learned through Sandplay is that there's an energy inside of us, if you want to call it spirit or whatever, there's an energy inside of us that wants to help us grow. And my work as the witness, quote unquote, the therapist, is not to have the answer. My work is to hold the space for that inner energy to come into fullness in you. And that I have to pull back all my projections. I don't know whether anger is good or bad. I don't know whether bitterness is right or wrong. I don't know what's up. I don't know what's down. I don't know. It's like I stand back and hold you in the fullness of who you are as you become the true, authentic self you are.
Thank you. I'm going to give you the gift of not letting you rush through this. Right? I'm going to keep inviting you to slow down, because everything within you wants to race through this, but all the magic is if you slow down.
Yeah.
And everything within your lovely modern mind is chattering away about how to get rid of this tension.
Okay.
How do I get rid of the anxiety and not, the anxiety is a gift. It's here to tell you some truth. So before
and you know, the teaching that I received is that the word shalom in Hebrew is a very particular type of peace, and it's not about uniformity, and it's not boring at all. That at the very heart of shalom is tension, because it's the tension of two or more moving towards harmony, and that necessarily we must be in tension. But it's not a tension for argument, it's not a tension for debate, it's the tension of our authentic selves as we try to move to greater communion. And so how can we help our communities understand to invite this respectful tension and not try to resolve it?
Come on. I always think about shalom as peace sitting side by side with no peace.
Yeah.
Shalom wraps its arms around peace and the lack of peace, presence and the absence. They sit side by side. And everything within earlier stages of growth and consciousness has to resolve the two. And every movement into greater maturity and health will not need to resolve them. It'll just hold them both. It's all part of it.
It's all. I love the name of that course, all of it.
What? Oh, yeah, it's all part of it.
It's all part of it.
Oh, this person, I just saw the art of dialogue is being lost. No, it's not. We're dialoguing right now. No, it's not. That's what we're doing right now. One thing, it's not being lost. Yeah, we're keeping it alive.
But let's blow on the embers.
Yes. Okay, you got another one? Ginny, you got something for us?
I do, yeah. Ryan asked, any thoughts on how to engage harsh or violent factionalism with both humanizing compassion and a firm commitment to your own values and heart?
Go, Rob. Great question.
In times of loss, transition, tragedy, or disruption, there are generally two dominant invitations. The one is to dig in your heels, to fight it, and try to take things back to how they were. You with me on this? To some imagined time of peace or bounty or when it was great. Just get me back to when, because the ancient pattern is orientation, disorientation, reorientation. So in times of disorientation, one of the two major temptations invitations is always to regress, to dig in your heels, although the universe has only been going forward for 13 billion years. The other invitation in times of transition, change, disruption, disequilibrium is to allow the pain and disruption to break you open so that you become bigger, wider, more expansive. And in that disruption are these seeds of imagination of a new tomorrow. So what we're seeing right now in our world, let's take American culture, is American population is more diverse. We have horrific sins of our fathers that haven't been properly addressed. We have a massive widening gap between rich and poor. We have whole institutions, education, economic, government, religion that aren't serving us well. And a number of people, in their fear of the unknown of what another tomorrow looks like, are desperately trying to drag this thing back to some perceived moment of goodness, basically when it looked like they look. And then you have another group of people who are saying, hey, wait a second, let's embrace all this and see where it's going to take us. Mm-hmm. So that's the problem with the internet, is it keeps everybody stuck in their head with arguments and Facebook articles and questions about the facts, when it's actually a deeper spiritual posture of openness or closed. And that's the actual thing. So to engage, you got to go all the way back there. Every factory in your town got shut down and the people with the power and money didn't seem to care. I get why you're upset. You were taught that these people who aren't like you are wrong, evil, they're the barbarians, they're terrorists. Yeah, that's all based on early, right, Alexander? Early, that we have to invite you out of that reptilian lizard brain that only knows threat assessment. Yeah.
So for me, I go back to the example given by our first Christian ancestors, the first 250 years, who were in an oppressive empire, who had no value for their way of living and thinking and being. And they chose to continue to move their way of being forward and deeper, not expecting the empire to approve of them, not expecting that they weren't going to there weren't going to be consequences for the way that they chose to live and believe. Understanding that they were going to speak truth to power, but they were going to do it in a way that didn't demonize the adversary. And they believed, it's more than belief, they knew that love wins. They knew it. Therefore, they could wait out 200 years because they knew that ultimately love wins. We just don't know when or how. But it's like each one of us has got to get up every day and do that small action of love and justice that moves us forward, giving it to the future without expecting to see the turnaround.
So true. So true.
And do it with joy.
Yeah. Alexander, can I riff on that for a second?
Please.
This system has, in many ways, as it's generating energy, scarcity and lack. Like the market itself, we need competition for this thing to flourish, which fundamentally is a binary of winners and losers. It has scarcity and lack built into its algorithm. So when you do this, and now we're, 250 years into this experiment? And so the upside of the greatest economic engine, blah, 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 the world has ever seen, as that was built on a deep, deep, non-Trinitarian, non-generative understanding of the universe, even though it says generative.
Mm-hmm.
And what it produces are winners and losers.
Right.
And without an understanding of the actual generative nature of the universe, which is justice, there's enough for all, this is where this whole thing goes.
Right.
So actually, if you were to map this out 250 years, endless expansion up and to the right, baby. Whatever you do, don't regulate that thing. Just let it. This is what you would get. This is actually not that surprising. And anytime you want new creation, the only way you'll have new creation is to have a disruption of the present creation. And somebody somewhere always has a vested interest in the current creation and its structures.
Is anybody else noticing that the sun just poked through the leaves behind Rob as he was saying that? It's a little kind of cool symbolism going on right there.
Cue the sun. We are in Los Angeles. Is the palm tree? There's a palm tree right. I'm sitting under a palm tree. Ooh,
there it is.
There we go.
Yep, there it is.
Yeah. Can we get that?
The sun,
can we get that
the sun is
spotlight?
setting here in Santa Fe.
Let me get the lighting team to work on the palm tree for a minute. See what we can do. Oh goodness. You and I basically just like tag team sermoning. We just like tag team sermoning. That's really fun.
So Rob, what you're describing to me is Christian. And that's the community I want to go to. And I'm not looking for the name on their door. I'm looking for this new way of being together. I love the phrase, and I've co-opted it out of your book, a common life together.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I want my Christianity to stand for.
Yeah. Yep. 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 Absolutely. How do we arrange ourselves? And how does the world get ordered? And obviously we can order the world better.
Right.
Of course we can.
But we've got to be willing to be disruptors.
I don't think you and I have this problem.
It's true.
All right, we've got another question that has been sort of upvoted here in the comments, so I want to get to it for you guys.
Oh my word, upvoting, a new term. Upvoting.
Yes. Would love to hear you two talk about this phrase in the book. Spirit is often lurking in whatever it is you most dislike. Thanks for that, Randy.
Yeah. If you begin to see the whole thing as your teacher, and you begin to see there's this person who has a supernatural ability to get under your skin. So all parts exist within wholes. All wholes contain a series of parts. So I can see the parts. There's me and there's this person, different parts, keep them apart. But that keeps everything apart. But if I can get better at asking, why does this person get under my skin? Because it's taking part within a whole. So if I can locate the whole. So for example, in America right now, think of all the citizens of this particular political entity, the United States of America. Why do these people, because we're all part of the same body, why do I see things so differently than these people? Well, what are they here to teach me? If you turn it around and ask, how are they my teacher? It just gets way more interesting. You can still passionately disagree. You hold on to your convictions more than ever. But you've also moved from more parts to the understanding that all parts exist within wholes. So that's one of the things in the book is I keep inviting people to move past all the usual categories that just leave the world in shambles. There's something about this system that profoundly lets people down. Basic. So what is that? And to act like I'm not a part of this body just isn't true. That's always the invitation. By the way, this, in my experience, if somebody really gets under your skin, and instead of just, what do they have to teach me about me? Why do they provoke a reaction? Because there's lots of things that can provoke it. Why do they have this particular ability? What is it? And move it from them to me. I mean, in my experience, nothing opens you up faster.
So Rob, I just want to rewrite your line.
Oh, good.
To say something like, my greater vital life lurks in what I dislike.
My greater vital life. Yeah. 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 I think about everybody who has spent an ungodly amount of time the past 4 or 5 years focusing on the president and his many tweets and defects. If you turn that around and just say, this is why becoming a person of empathy, character, substance, and integrity is so important. This is why these things are so important. Because without setting your intention on a particular path of becoming a certain kind of person, you become another kind of force in the world. So if you can convert, I think about it like building a converter in your heart. Every single time you're like, what the, to what is the invitation for me? What is the path for me? You convert it into energy to become a certain kind of person. Yeah. By the way, how long do we do this, Alexander? Jeannie, does this thing blow up at some point? Where are we at?
Well, we all do turn
Well,
into pumpkins
right.
about 8:30. So we've got, but I think people are really engaged. So I'd love to ask a few more questions.
Let's
from
do
the
a couple
chat
more.
if you
Sure.
guys-
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
I think a nice follow-up from what you were just discussing is from Becky, who says, how do we organize this into community now? Most churches don't have that energy.
Alexander, you have groups all over the place.
So, I mean, yes, I wrote this book called Heart and Mind, but my greatest passion is creating a new vital form of community that we have never had on the planet. We are really reaching for the next psychological stage in human development. So up to this point, we have had communities that are built on uniformity. They're built on tribalness. And what we're reaching for today is, can we have a community that comes together because they want to support each person's diverse authenticity? Can we find a way to use our diversity to be an aid to our authenticity and not disempower authenticity? And then can we go the next step, which is, can we have a community, a diverse, authentic community that learns how to bend back towards harmony? Now, all of this is exciting, but we're just getting started because we've never done this before in human history, not at the level of diversity that we have today. So I am setting up, Annie Simple, my partner in Spain, we are creating heart and mind communities around the world. Literally, we have them from Australia, China, across Europe, across the United States, teaching people how to go on the journey of transformation, which allows each person's authenticity to be a radiance into themselves. And gradually, how we can put that level of diversity back together in a new harmony that serves all of us. So we're just starting at this. I don't have a lot of answers. I have a lot of questions, and I have a vision of where we can go. But 200 years ago, we birthed the ego. Thank God. And we've developed this sense of an I-ness. Thank God. But now we've got to learn how to put my I-ness back together in a common life together, into a we-ness. But most of us are afraid of that because we think a we-ness is going to diminish me rather than empower me. And up to this point, it has. So my invitation to every Christian tradition, to every religious tradition today is, let's get on with this new form of community. Because there's no tradition on the planet right now which is ahead of another. Buddhism has got the same issue. Judaism has got the same issue. Christianity's got the issue. Indigenous peoples have got the issue. But together, we have a new opportunity.
Man, oh man. Alexander, can I run something by you?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to. And this
That's
question,
more on.
anywhere in the world, I'm sure you get this. I get this question all the time about new community. And what's fascinating to me when I ask the person, what is the gathering that if you stumbled upon one, you would think, oh my God, this is what I was looking for. And what's interesting is if I just begin asking the person, is it in a backyard, a living room, a front yard, a park, next to a body of water? What would it, and people always have answers. So would there be food? People are always like, yeah, what else? Would everybody have read a book? Would everybody bring a photo from their childhood and you'd go around and tell how this photo tells us something about who you've become? Would there be, everybody brings a quote that is shaped, like just basic, you know what I mean? Is there a ritual? Is there a teaching you listen to? Is there a walk that you take and there's one question you're just, everybody can intuit their way to a gathering that is like, oh, I could use that. And I've never ever had somebody to describe the kind of gathering they're aching for that they couldn't organize for no money with resources they already possess. And every single time I've said to somebody, do you have people that you could email about this? And they always say, oh my God, yeah, my friends and I, yeah, there's so many people I've talked to who are like, I would just love a space, which goes back to a new era we're entering where instead of waiting for an external authority structure that validates you, mediated, people are going, oh, the Spirit's being poured out on everybody.
Right.
You're the authority. So what is your experience? What is it you're longing for? That's the authority. What is it that you know is an actual authentic human community that supports you and others in order to be who you're here to be? That feeling you have of like, that's actually the authority. It always has been, by the way. You could actually do this.
And I just want to add, there's one piece of formation that such a community is going to need, because it's where community is often going to fall apart. How do we come to the table and deal with the tension of diversity?
Yes.
Beyond that, we can go
right.
a whole range of places.
Right.
But when that tension is there, which it's going to be if we really have come together in authenticity, how are we going to deal with it? How are we going to respect it? How are we going to enliven it and actually in some ways revel in it?
So all of the things that would previously have had you rolling your eyes, let's convert all the rolling of eyes and the elbowing to your partner to, look at this thing.
Yeah.
Who would have cooked up this hodgepodge of humanity? What an interesting thing.
I mean, and this is what you open up. I love the Zimzum book. This is what you're opening up there.
The space that exists between us.
Right.
Yeah. That's actually why I love our neighborhood. You've been here in the middle of LA. Is on any given day, what I'm going to run into is like, it never stops. Like, what human beings, the fantastic divergence of paths of everything that human beings are capable of is like, it's like living in the midst of it. So after a while, instead of like, you just go, haven't seen that. Yeah. You start to revel in it.
Yeah. One of my favorite homes ever was on a street corner in New Orleans. And I could look out my front window and the drug deals were going down on my front porch. But I love the vibrancy of that diverse community was incredible.
Absolutely. I love how you said revel in it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Jenny, let's do another one.
All right. There's some ones a little farther back.
These are fantastic.
Get to. These are really great questions.
All these fantastic people you can feel through Zoom, huh, Alexander? So interesting.
It's a little different than in person, but it does work, right?
Oh,
All
for
right.
me, like
Yeah.
the live event where I can like feel everybody breathing and where energy is flying around the room. But this thing here is like a completely different experience. But you can
Yes.
feel everybody tuned in. Like we all know that there's this new thing happening.
Jenny, I see a question there about my Christmas book.
Oh, yes, that's one. Thank you.
Of course.
Folks really want to know.
What would be a
It-
gathering without an update on the Christmas event?
Right.
Book.
It's coming in a rudimentary form this year. I actually am going to invite people who want to buy this and work with me through it. And the more beautiful formal book will be next year. But there will be
Okay, good.
almost sort of a 13-day of Christmas workbook.
There you have it, people. Who knew you would get this official announcement?
You heard it
Right
here
here,
first.
right here.
Alexander, let me just appropriately remind you that we all want to know what you have in your head, literally in your head and heart. Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff there that we would love it if it got out on the page. I'm just saying. I think I speak for the whole committee here. You know?
Well, I mean, in essence, I want to take all the Christian feasts back to the vitality of our
Yeah.
lived life together.
Yeah.
It all comes out of the earth and the sky and the water and our being with each other. And it's fallen into a ritual of a ritual of a ritual that's far away from us.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
We
Give us the book. Give us the book.
So need, I mean, you've heard me talk about this. We so need Christmas right now because Christmas teaches us that darkness is the place of holiness from which new life springs. That's the essence of the Christmas experience. We are in Christmas right now, if we would but recognize it and have the spiritual practices to let it sing.
So true. Yeah, see, get that book. Come on, man.
The rudimentary workbook is coming. It'll be available through my website.
Okay.
All right.
I don't know if rudimentary is going to cut it with us, but okay, we'll take what we
All
can
right.
get.
Well, somebody said, shut up and take my money. So I think they're ready for whatever you have.
I love that person. Shut up and take my money.
That's Jake. So thanks for that, Jake.
Oh, Jake. Of course it would be somebody named Jake. That is just perfect.
All right. So I
Oh.
think this might be a good one to wrap up with. I think
Okay.
it hits something from Glenn, who said, how do you balance grieving the death of what was while looking forward to the new thing that is to come? Sometimes the thing or season that has died is a pain that feels too much to bear.
You don't balance it. You just feel it, all of it, and you honor it without judgment. Today, you might be in your pajamas till 3 p.m. Okay. You just acknowledge it's all part of being human. It's all part of it. So balance is overrated. Balance applies.
Yeah.
You're like moving instead of you wrap your arms. Balance implies these two hands, and which one is heavier and which one. So instead of taking these two experiences in these two hands and trying to figure out, take the two hands and wrap your arms around the full experience. There's a lot to grieve right now. So some days we're grieving. Like the sine, where are we on the sine waves? First thing in the morning, I walk the dog. Some mornings I just have to like breathe out a bunch of things. You're with me, Alexander? You just honor it.
Well, I want people to go back to other moments in their life which were painful and remember how they lived through them to something new. And I want you to read the books or watch the films of those people that struggled to something new. And I want you to remember that winter does become spring. But I also want you to know that the way that winter moves to spring is by living each moment of winter.
Yep.
And don't walk alone. Please don't walk alone. And know that there is a presence in you, and I hope that there are presences around you to walk through winter with you.
Yep. Yep. Well said.
Well, everybody's
Well said.
crying in the chat. So I think you've moved
Yeah.
many people here, gentlemen.
So, Alexander, seriously, I'm so honored you did this with me. It was so great. Once again, you did what you do.
Wow.
You did what you do.
No. But we do good work together, and I was delighted and honored to be asked.
Well,
that was another, I was standing on the edge of the Atlantic Ocean in Spain shouting.
Oh, that just, seriously, that just moves me more than I could ever put words on.
Thank you. Thank you, brother, for what you give all of us.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you, Jenny.
Oh, well, thank you to the both of you for letting all of us listen to this really, really moving conversation. I know there were many other questions that we just, we could be here all night to get to, but I think it sounds like a lot of that is in the book. So you're all going to be getting signed copies of the book. Those will be available for pickup if you chose that starting tomorrow, or we will start shipping those out to you if you are not local to us starting tomorrow as well. So I know you're anxious to get your hands on those, so we'll get them out to you just as soon as humanly possible. So we'll get that. And everybody, happy reading and be safe out there. Thank you for spending your time with us. And Rob and Alexander, anytime, please. In any form, now we've proven. You'll come back and...
Good. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Anderson. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you,
and all the people. Jess, Jules. Oh, absolutely. I know Jules to Jesus. Jules to Jesus. Woo! I know these people. All of these people here. Just wonderful. Thank you all. Yes, much love. Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone. Bye.